Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to take a look at the 2 to 4 player game Varia, which is a fast action first player combat card game. Now, we're going to look at the starter set for Varia, which will support up to 2 players. So you can get more decks on there to go to 2 to 4. Let's go ahead down the table here. I'll give you a general overview of how to play the game, and we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is what you get with the Varia starter set. You're going to get 2 different decks. You're going to get the Boom Slang deck, and you're going to get this little flavor card here that's going to give you a little bit of background on the character that this deck is made out of. And you're also going to get the Magnus deck, and you'll get a little character card here that gives you a little backstory on that character also. You're going to get a couple different components with these decks. One of them is going to be these little status cards, and the rule book says you can cut these guys so they become little cards, and these are going to be status effects that can be placed on an opponent. You'll also get some tokens. The tokens here you're also going to set aside for right now. These tokens can be brought into play with different effects that are existing in the deck itself. So like this one here is really nice because this one here gets you create like a copy of the next available moment. So it's sort of like a really cool copy card. So you'll want to try to work to probably get those out. You'll also get item cards. Now these are already pre-done, so you don't have to worry about the 30 gold limit that you have to make up your item deck or anything, because these are set up to be playable right out of the box and there's nothing for you to do. Now this one comes with 3 different item cards here. These ones will go in front of you, as these are available and treated like they're cards in your hand, and you can use them for what they say on them. Like this one here can also be used as a fast action. So a couple things we're going to go over. We're going to go over the basic rules of the game in a second, but I'm going to show you a couple more things first. So you'll also get a deck of 30 cards that you will shuffle up, and these will be unique cards to that character, and you get a good bit of like asymmetric ability in these ones. So you'll notice that the Boom Slang one's all about being an assassin, so there's going to be some really cool sneak cards in here. And then you can see this one matches the token card that you have available. So this is the Boom Slang deck. You also notice that in the Boom Slang deck, which we'll go over in a second, this is actually the time cost to actually play the card when it goes to the moment. And if you notice through the Assassin deck, that these are all generally reasonable. So you're going to be able, when it's the active player's turn in their Assassin, you can actually potentially have more moments going, which we'll explain in a minute, than some other decks. Now the Magnus deck here, it has these Fury of Fist tokens, it has Twin Strike tokens, and it has Combat Reflection tokens. So it's going to have this guy, your Twin Strokes one, and your Combat Reflex cards. Those will go off to the side. Now one thing in this rule that I'm not going to explain is you can actually do deck construction, so you can take all these decks you got and make your own deck, but you don't have to with Varia. They have these pre-done decks, like I said. All right, so these are you get 2 weapons with Magnus here, and you can notice already that Magnus is about like hitting really hard. So, and this hammer right here is awesome, but also look, it's 20 gold. And this one's okay, it's 10 gold, it's still really good. All right, and then again, you get your 30 card deck of actions that this one can take. Now, one thing you'll notice when we're flipping through these cards that you have available with Magnus is that some of these, you'll notice that he either has like super fast attacks, so they're There are a lot of fast attacks and there are a lot of low action costs. Whoops, that was one of the dual cards you have. I'll show you in a second. And he has some super big strikes that he can do. So he's about punching real quick and sometimes really hard. So there's a whole bunch of 4s in here. And I'll show you here again. This is the status card that comes with Enraged and Fatigued. I haven't cut these. They say you can. That terrifies me. I just use a token and put it out. But you would take those cards and you take them off to the side. So we have our 2 players here. Now you can play up to 4. You'd have to get more of these starter decks, and you can do it free for all or teams. But the rules will stay the same for that. So we'll take these cards off this side. Each player is going to have their deck of cards here, and they're going to put out their items. So let's put this player way up here. Here's his deck of cards, or her deck of cards, and her items. And this is Magnus. So we'll take this off to the side for now. We'll take these off to the side for now. And that's his deck of cards and his items. In addition to that, there's a couple other fields that are in the game. You're going to have your moments, which are going to come across the top here, and they'll go in timeline order because time is actually a resource in Varia, which is really cool. You're also going to have your deck, and technically this is your character area. This is where your items go. And then you're going to have your discard pile over here and your forgotten pile. Now the discard pile cards go face up, and the forgotten pile cards off to the side of that go face down. We'll scoot this over just a little bit so I have enough room for stuff. All right, so in a game of Varia, it's going to go over multiple different rounds. Each player is going to get 30 health and 10 action points. Your goal in the game is to reduce your opponent down to 0 health before you do. Now, a couple things about action points and health. In Varia, that is the set number. You can't go over 30 health and you can't go over 10 action points, regardless of if cards give you more of these points. So it's one thing to keep in mind while playing the game. Now, we're going to go over a couple, just basically the turn order and what you're going to do throughout the game. Like I said, you're going to continue these steps until someone gets down to 0 health. So in Varia, players do shared turns. Now you're going to take turns being the active or the reactive player. So you could roll the 6-sided die and see whoever gets the highest, and they can determine at the start of the game if they're the active or reactive player. After you do that, you're going to start the first round. At the start of the first, turn, each player is going to draw cards. Now, if it's the first turn of the game, each player is going to get 6 cards. Now, on any future turn on this step, on the start of turn, each player is going to draw 2 cards. There is no hand limit size in Varia, so it's worth keeping in mind. And you're going to do a lot with time in here, so you're going to do a lot with managing that. So you'll get your 6 cards. So I got my 6 cards. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to go into the movement phase. Now the movement phase is super quick. All you're going to do is pick between 2 different states. So the active players can either say that I'm going to be disengaged or engaged with the enemy. Now, what that means is that if you're disengaged, ranged attacks are the only thing that are going to hit. If you're engaged, whatever hits. So they're going to state that. So for the rest of this turn, the players are going to be like next to each other, engaged or disengaged apart. So that'll affect what cards you actually want to play in the game. The next thing you're going to do is going to be the most important part. And a couple things we're going to talk about this. You're going to go through your hand and pick which actions you want to place. You can place as many actions as you want /can. But that's going to determine how many moments are for the rest of the turn. You can't add any more moments after that. The opponent can't add more than you put down. That's a set timeline that you're setting up. So let's say, and a couple different things in here. I'm going to change this up a little bit. But, oh yeah, I do have one fast. So I could say, all right, well, I'm going to only do a couple moments here. I'm going to take a look at this. I'm not actually paying this resource yet, so that's important. So notice this guy's 9. So I could say, well, I'm going to do a heavy hit. Well, actually, that's probably a horrible idea. So I'm going to, at least initially, so I'm going to still only probably have a couple moments. Now, these will actually get resolved in order. So let's not go into strategy too much. I'm just going to say I'm going to do something like that. Yeah, let's say I'm going to do something like that. So for the rest of this turn, there's only going to be 2 moments. There can't be any more. And I'm the active player. So now the reactive player can take a look at these cards. And I say I'm actually going to say, yes, this is really bad. I didn't even look at it. So let's go ahead and put a different card down. Let's go ahead and make this not look as bad. All right, so I said I was engaged, let's say, and I had that. All right, now my opponent, so there's 3 moments to this. Now my opponent can respond to each of these. Again, not paying attention necessarily to having to pay the cost yet. That's not until the end. So now my opponent can place their cards. So let's say it's going to do, let's go ahead and say, that's a pretty heavy hitting card. So we're going to do something like this. We're going to do something like this. And we'll place this down. Okay. So now that that's done, that is going to end the action phase. So the opponent didn't actually have to put 3 down. They just did. Now what I could do is we go into the next portion, and that's going to go ahead and do the fast reaction phase. And the fast reaction phase can go over a couple different things. So you're going to take a look, and you're going to look at cards that say fast, okay? And you can now place these on the different moment, whatever one you want. And there's 2 different options for that. I could place it and replace the moment. And then if I do, this becomes forgotten, goes face down. Or I can combine them. If I combine them, so I do a combo, these cards now become a single copy with both actions and everything that's on both of these. So the ability and everything. So you would take, this would be 4 plus 0, which is 4, and 4 plus 3, which is 7. So I can do that. My opponent now has the chance to do the same thing. They can place their fast actions on there. You could also, don't forget, you have these weapon cards that you can place out in these areas, and they count as cards. Think of them as cards in your hand. So I forgot to mention those. You can also put them out. You're going to continue doing the fast actions until, like, going back and forth until each player is done doing fast actions. Once fast actions are done, you're going to go into the resolution phase. And this one, you're going to go ahead and go and finish each moment on the timeline in order. So what you're going to do is both players are going to pay their costs. So they have to pay their action points. So I have 10 action points, and now I have 8 because I paid for this. Then you're going to resolve these cards. In Varia, there's going to be 2 values you're going to look at here. The top one is attack, and the bottom one is focus. So these ones here you will roll dice in Varia to do a little bit of randomization of those. So in here, I'm going to say, okay, we can hit each other because we're engaged here. I'm going to look at my focus first, and then I'm going to roll the dice. So I got a 2 plus 2, so I have 4 focus, Now my opponent's going to roll it, and they have a 2 + 2 4. So they didn't get greater than me, so I hit. So the next thing I do is I look at my attack, which is 2, roll the 6-sided dice, so I have 8. My opponent rolls theirs, they have 6. 2 is the difference, and I do 2 damage to the opponent. This moment is done. Then we go to the next, and then we go to the next, and so on. That's how that actually works. Now, if we were not engaged, we were disengaged, and we didn't have a ranged attack, those just don't happen. So nothing happens. You still roll focus for them because some cards actually have things that depend on that are triggers. So this game also has triggers in it, and those will occur at what they say on the card itself. If you can't pay, when it gets to it, if you can't pay for a card at all, that card gets pushed, and they'll probably end up getting moved off and put into a queue. And what that means is in the next round, those guys will be the cards that you play in order. So once this is all done and we're all resolved, you're going to take all the cards that are in the field and discard them that were actually played. If they're items, they will go back to your character section of the board because these are always considered in your hand. And then we will go back, and the other player, in this case my opponent, will become the active player, and we'll continue on, like I said, until we get down to 30 points. And that's generally a quick overview of the rules of the game. Okay, I really like this game. It's very fast, it's really fun. I really like how asymmetric the two decks are and different. I really like how they balance really well, and they seem to be a good match for each other. So, the starter set, the 2 decks that come with it are great. We're going to go over more of the decks in the future videos. We're going to do a video for each of the other decks that you can get, but those are the 2 decks that you get with the starter set itself. A couple things I would have liked is I would have liked some sort of like health and action point counter on there, but minor gripes. You can use a piece of paper or whatever for that. I love the art on the cards, and I love the interplay that you get when you do the placing down the moments for the action with the actions, and you also doing the fast actions when you get to sort of go back and forth and repair your different moments to try to combat the opponent. I also like the little bit of variability that you get with the attack and focus, rolling the die on there. The focus is a little closer because it's a 4-sided die, so that's going to be the one that you can mitigate the most, and that's the one that gets to determine whether you actually hit the opponent, so I really like that a lot. There's just a really lot to love in the game, and it's super fast. Now, when we show those are a pre-constructed deck, as far as I understand, the other decks that you get are all pre-constructed. There's not going to, as far as I understand, there's not like a deck of just cards that you can use to construct decks, but what you can do is after you get so many decks, you can actually construct your own deck. And there's not a whole lot that you have to worry about when you're doing the deck construction, just to throw out. I mean, you have some symbols on there that you're going to need to match up for deck construction to make sure they're the same type of cards. You also can't have more than 30 action cards. You need to have 30 of those. And you can't have more than 30 points worth of gold of the items. So deck construction is pretty easy too. It's more going to be in the strategy of what cards you use and how many and whatnot. And I haven't yet got into doing any constructed decks, so just keep that in mind. So yes, so if you're looking for a nice card combat game that you can play relatively quickly, it has a lot of replayability, there's a lot of other decks you can use, I would probably suggest putting them all in this box. Well, I don't think all of them, but get most of them in the box and take this box with you. You can have a great night of just playing different decks, maybe best out of 2 to 3 games and stuff like that, but this game is great for that. So that's my thoughts on Varia. Thank you for watching.